Hi, everybody, and welcome to New Jersey Revolution Radio's weekly live stream. We do a little live stream here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. That's guaranteed. We do pop on with other live streams here and there. Not every guest is ready for a live stream, and my schedule doesn't allow me to do more than that. I wish I could, because we're getting great results. We're getting a lot of views. People are enjoying these things, and they're kind of fun to do. It's nice having this medium to work with. So tell your friends about New Jersey Revolution Radio, and please tell them to tune in here on Facebook Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock. This week, I'm very lucky to be joined by a comrade that I've known for a long time. We worked together a little bit very early on in 15 now, when I still basically had no clue what I was doing. Some may argue that hasn't changed a whole lot. But Yves Nibungco is an awesome organizer, and he was doing grassroots work with the Filipino community in North Jersey. He's still doing that work today. He's also expanded his work to work with the International Committee on Human Rights in the Philippines. Yves, thanks for joining me tonight. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good, thank you, Brian, for having me here.
Oh, no problem, man. I'm excited to have you. So, as we discussed before, we'd like you to introduce yourself to the audience. What brought you here to New Jersey, and why do you do the things that you do? We'll get into what you do, but tell us a little bit about your story, man.
Sure. I was born and raised in the Philippines. I migrated here in the United States back in 2005. It was first in California, but I moved to New Jersey, Jersey City. So I've been here since 2007. And just enjoying the place.
Yeah, you've been in Jersey City your whole time in the United States?
You lost.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh, I was muted.
Oh.
I've done that twice on live streams now. Darn. So you moved here in 2007 directly from the Philippines?
From California first, and then 2005 from the Philippines.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And where did you live at in the Philippines when you were there?
So I lived in Manila, the national capital region, in a place called Navotas. It's a small town. Yeah.
Do you have family still there?
Yeah, I still have pretty much most of my family and some family here in the United States, but most of my family are still in the Philippines.
Any family over here with you in the United States?
Yep, I have my mom and my dad here.
That's nice. That's nice. Now, you said you moved from California. Where in California? It was near San Diego.
Southern California, around like Palmdale, Antelope Valley area.
Okay, I lived in San Diego for 4 years. I was
nice.
I was in the military, and I know there was a large Filipino immigrant community in the Navy, and
Yep.
I remember that was one thing I was surprised as an 18-year-old guy who was born and raised like in an all-white community. I was just getting used to seeing diversity, and I was surprised to see people from another country in our own military force. Is that a common thing for Filipino people to join the United States military?
Yeah, I mean, it directly ties to, the colonial relationship and history of the United States and the Philippines. And at some point, it recruited a lot of, Filipinos to join the Navy and to fight its wars overseas.
Do they target specific communities in the Philippines, or is it like is there like a widespread recruiting drive in your country for our military?
I think before, definitely when the Philippines was still a direct colony of the United States, there was a push, and then later around the 60s, 70s, enticed by the benefits and other incentives. Young Filipinos it's popular among young Filipinos to apply and try to be in the Navy. In the hopes of that they will be able to come here to the United States.
Right. So it was more of a thing where they wanted to live here. and of course you mentioned the monetary benefits, which is similar to what was here in the United States when they recruit us. When I remember one thing was looking back on it. Actually, I don't think I noticed these things too much at the time, but there was a lot of people there out of poverty, out of the idea that I didn't have a job. A lot of guys that got out of high school. I myself was somebody who got out of high school, didn't want to go to college, just wanted a job, really. But there was a lot of people that had come from very rough situations in the military as kind of a last resort. But it doesn't. It's to do that to your own people, but then to try to tempt people from another country to come in and fight your wars for you is a whole. You just don't think about these things when you're in. Now that I'm older and wiser, I wish I had met some organizers earlier on to teach me about these things and its real impact in both countries, and we will get into that a little bit. I guess what I'd like to ask you about before we get into kind of the international stuff, which feeds into this conversation, but what you've done in New Jersey, and talk about maybe a little bit about the community that you work in here in New Jersey, where they come from, and how you guys work together to kind of support each other in this country as immigrants.
Sure. In the United States, there are 4 million Filipinos. Actually, the largest population of Filipinos outside of the Philippines is here in the United States, and 120,000 of them are here in New Jersey. I think it's in the top 10 concentration of Filipinos. Outside of Hawaii, California, right? New Jersey, and most of us are here. In Jersey City and Hudson County, wherein roughly around 20,000 Filipinos live. Mostly working class Filipinos who migrated from the Philippines, right?
Right.
Forced by the economic necessity of finding a way to survive, finding opportunities. Yep. And in here, we're here mostly in Jersey City. Working in different fields, like what I said, mostly working class, in the restaurants, and some, mostly in the healthcare.
Yeah. That's awesome. And you also are now working with an international committee. Now, is that something that sprung out of your work here in New Jersey, or is that something that you've been doing kind of in conjunction with all your other work?
Well, yeah. I started my work here in Jersey City back in 2008. I started as a youth organizer with Anak Bayan, New Jersey, which is a national democratic mass organization of Filipino youth, who continues to fight for the genuine liberation and democracy of the Philippines. So a lot of my political awakening and my training came from Anak Bayan, and then later on. As we saw the need, I also organized Filipino immigrant workers through Migrante, New Jersey. Because majority of our compatriots here are working class and are also affected by the issues of low wages, discrimination, and issues of repression of immigrants, right? The deportations, etc. Piecing those things together, it's really unavoidable and necessary to connect the issues of Filipinos here to the struggle back home in the Philippines of continuing U.S. intervention and domination of our country economically, politically, and militarily, especially now in the time of Duterte.
Yeah, we need to talk about that, and we will right away. I want to push in a bit from a perspective of a labor organizer, and I've spent a lot of years organizing people into labor unions and teaching people about their rights in the workplace. It adds a whole new level of consideration when you talk about organizing in predominantly immigrant workforces. There are language issues, there are human rights issues, and there are all kinds of other issues that come with that, but I think it's something that labor organizers need to get better at and learn from, organizations like Migrante and your work, because, the way the country is going right now is we are becoming a multicultural society, and if we want to continue to move in that direction of understanding, we need labor peace as part of that. And so, I'll certainly consider that going forward, and I've been considering it the last couple of years. But when you talk about your labor organizing and how it intersects with immigrant justice,
Yeah.
thank you for that point, and I just wanted to reiterate it. Now, you talked about the American relationship with the Philippines in conjunction with the conditions that the President Duterte is causing himself. What's the difference before he came into power? And I know he's been in power longer than Trump, but before he came into power, what was going on, and what gave rise to him? As we examine the rise of Trump in our own country, are there parallels there? Is it a different situation? How did this guy get to be the president of the Philippines?
Yeah, I guess a quick background on the Philippines for folks who are watching. The Philippines is an archipelago, which is a group of islands in the Southeast Asia. Roughly more than 7,000 islands, right? It was first colonized by Spain back in 1500s, right? As part of its empire. But in 1896, it launched one of the first anti-colonial revolution in Asia, which practically kicked out Spain, side by side with, simultaneously waging a revolution with Cuba at that time, no? And then this new imperial power, the United States, came by pretending to be our friend, with the Spanish-American War, and while that's happening, they made a deal with Spain through the Treaty of Paris, which sold the Philippines together with Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Guam for $20 million. And Spain surrendered or sold these territories to the United States. And since then, the Philippines has been a colony of the United States. And one of, as we call, the first Vietnam of the United States was the Philippine-American War in practically 1899 onwards, where it waged one of the bloodiest campaign in the Philippines that wiped out hundreds of thousands of Filipinos in what is now known as the Philippine-American War. And in 1946, we were let go by the United States after imposing a lot of unjust treaties. And since then, they've been, intervening in the Philippines. So this intervention and this legacy of the United States created what we call as a semi-colonial and semi-feudal society. Semi-colonial because its economic, political, and military policies, and even foreign affairs, is dictated or heavily influenced by the United States. Semi-feudal because the United States destroyed the capacity of the Philippines to industrialize and to develop as a prosperous country, able to provide for its needs. It turned our country into supplier of raw materials and cheap labor and dumping ground of finished products. And this placed the Philippines since then into a constant state of crisis, wherein it's always ripe for an uprising. It's ripe for the people to rise up, right? And since then, puppet governments come one after the other, right? Until, really just catering to the interests of imperial powers like the United States, to the point of, creating the labor export program, or turning Filipinos, our people, our laborers, into our biggest export. That's why you see a lot of, professionals here, or workers here from the Philippines, because of the labor export program instituted by the Philippine government. So this is the Philippines mired in poverty and irresolvable crisis. that's where Duterte came in, no? At a global situation wherein the United States no longer have a monopoly on power, right? Wherein its empire is overstretched, and rising powers like China and other independent blocs like other developing countries. So Duterte tried to present himself as as an outsider, as an anti-oligarch, or a maverick, in the political scene, um, with the promises of independent foreign policy, kicking out the United States, um, charting an independent foreign policy, and bringing, providing real change to the Filipinos.
Right.
I'm sure folks here remember or might have heard when he started cursing out Obama,
Yeah.
um, on
What
the,
did he say? He
I
said
think, well, he said like
told him to go fuck
Obama's
himself or something.
son of a bitch or something like
That's
that.
right. He called him a son of a bitch.
And
Yeah.
he carried a picture of the piles of bodies of Filipinos killed during the Philippine American War. So he has this like theatrics of like appearing as
Right.
a anti-imperialist. He also called himself a socialist, a leftist president, the first leftist president of the Philippines. But on the other hand, he also bragged about, or has been talking about, um, matching the Holocaust of Hitler, in terms of like wiping out the drug users in the Philippines. So that's where we are now.
Wow. That's. I mean, it's. Thank you for all of that context, and thinking about all the individual stories that go into. I
Yeah.
mean, since the 1700s,
Oh
and
yeah.
here we are. I mean, Christ, 250 years. That's a long time. Um, Generations of people dealing with this oppression. So, kudos to you for fighting back. Of course. Now, the situation, what we see here in American media, is always a little filtered, but it's very hard to deny that this guy Duterte is an extraordinarily violent guy. There was a big drug problem, and there still is a big drug problem in the Philippines, as far as I know. But this is certainly an overly aggressive
Mm-hmm.
manner. But he must have support in the country for this stuff. It's hard to get away with. And I just read a quote by Frederick Douglass that oppressors can only go as far as the oppressed let them. He
Mm-hmm.
must have some support for these policies. Has it been getting better or worse as these policies roll out and all this violence occurs? Is he a
So,
popular president still?
well, he did win. He got 16 million people vote for him, in a country of 100 million.
Hmm.
But he did get a majority, huge majority compared to his opponents, right? And we attribute this mostly to the protest vote of the Filipinos who are sick and tired of the current system, right? And of course, attribute it also to some of Duterte's, what he was promising as progressive policies, right? But as time goes by, he's now 2 years in office, right? And his rhetoric can no longer hide the reality of his regime, which is brutal, anti-people, fascist, and still subservient to foreign powers, and now not just to the United States, but also to China.
Very interesting, and I'd like to hear more about those
Yeah.
imperial powers and their influence.
And just to
So,
add,
yeah.
just in addition to what you were
What do you want,
asking
buddy?
earlier, initially he did have a lot of support, but it's
Yeah, okay.
dropping.
Go tell Bono.
No, as the impacts of his anti-poor, anti-worker policies starts to be felt more, such as the contractualization, which eliminates any job security to a lot of Filipino workers. No, and keeping the minimum wage so low, it's like less than $10
Mm.
per month, or sorry, per day.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, and he has threatened labor leaders that if they go on strike, they will kill him, or he will kill them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you touched on not just American influence, but Chinese influence as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess America is where we really should pay a lot of attention because that's where we are and that's where we can maybe
Yeah.
affect some change.
Mm-hmm.
But other imperial power, do you view China as an imperial power or as an influencer?
Yeah, definitely. We believe that China no longer it is no longer a progressive or no longer play a progressive role in international politics. It's now part of the contradictions among imperial powers, as we have seen its role in the Asia Pacific. The its aggression in the disputed territories in what they call as the South China Sea and what Filipinos call as the West
Right.
Philippine Sea.
Yeah.
It's creation of militarizing the area, right? It's investments, weaponizing its investments um, to exert more influence. Though we recognize China's aggressive role as a and now as an imperial power, right? We still would like to make it clear that the United States is still the number one imperialist power that the people of the world
Yeah.
needs to focus on and
Yeah.
challenge.
And it's the truth,
And
and I
mhm,
believe there was a recent world poll. They asked people from other
mhm,
countries, "Who do you think the biggest global
mhm.
threat is?" And by almost 70%, America was
Yeah,
the
and
answer, which is sad. Is sad, and it
mhm,
makes me sad as a guy that lives here.
mhm,
You know that we're viewed that way by the world. Why are we
mhm,
viewed that way in the Philippines? What is our influence on that country?
yeah,
What is and I'll follow it up with I'm going to ask you
mhm,
for some solutions, but
mhm,
currently, present day, what are we doing in the Philippines to make things better
mhm.
or worse?
Yeah. So in last November, uh, Trump attended the ASEAN or Association of Southeast Asian Nations summit held in Manila. Um, and in this summit, he met with Duterte, right? And clearly, there seems to be some bromance between Duterte and Trump, to the point that Duterte is singing
Shh.
songs to Trump, during the meeting. And in return, Trump continuously praised Duterte, even uh, Duterte's war on drugs, despite the international condemnation. He said that Duterte is doing really well. And I think recently he did make a statement that he might copy Duterte's war on drugs here in the United States, and maybe implementing some sort of a capital punishment on drug users. Um,
Wow.
but, on top of rhetoric, um, the United States under Trump continues to make a commitment of funding the Philippine military. Currently, more than $100 million of our tax money is going to the Philippines, and this is on top of uh, military weapons that they give and sell to the Philippine government, right? And another one is a $5 million aid towards the Philippine law enforcers who are in the front lines of this brutal war on drugs, which we would like to call really war on the poor,
Yeah.
no?
Yeah.
And on top of the funding that comes from our hard-earned tax dollars, no, 3,000 U.S. troops still maintain their presence in the Philippines, despite the fact that our constitution, the Philippine Constitution, bans their presence in the Philippines. They
Wow.
covered this up under the guise of military exercises and training, but we know that they are involved in covert operations, no, and in their so-called anti-terror operations in the Philippines.
Do you think or do you know of United States military or CIA or somebody from our country actually operating actively with the war on drugs that Duterte's carrying out?
We don't know But we know for sure that the Philippine National Police is working with the New York Police Department in some sort of like joint trainings
Oh,
with the
Jesus.
NYPD training Philippine National Police, including Israel, training Philippine National Police on some sort of surveillance techniques and stuff. So as you can see, this repressive and reactionary governments work hand in hand.
Yeah, and I know I'd known about the Israeli partnership with NYPD, but I had not known
Mhm.
about the involvement from the Philippines, which makes it even more terrifying. It was already scary just knowing that they're working with Israeli police and they're learning their style of oppression, and that should be a real wake up call, and maybe that will
Mhm.
get the attention of some people in this country if they look at what Duterte is doing in basically slaughtering people
Mhm.
extrajudicially for very simple things.
Sure.
And
And
is that the kind of policing you want brought to New York City or San Francisco? That's crazy. I don't even know what we have to offer them. Now, obviously, if we're going over there and we're doing these trainings and stuff, there's support there because ideas are exchanged and knowledge of tactics is exchanged. And I just can't imagine what we would want to share, with the tactics we're seeing
Mhm.
being used in that country. That's scary stuff.
Mhm.
We have to act. We have a moral responsibility as people, as my tax money is going to support these atrocities, as many other
Mhm.
atrocities being committed by our country overseas, not just in the Philippines, but all around the world. So I have that moral responsibility to at least speak out, and I think every American does. What are you doing? In your, I guess let's ask on two fronts. In New Jersey, what kind of
Mhm.
support do you need, and what
Ah,
support also do you need for your international work?
Um, I guess just to impress the gravity of the situation, if it's not yet clear to folks, no, in 2 years, um, the number of people who have died under Duterte's war on drugs, which we call war on the poor, has already reached 23,000. That's more than 33 people per day gunned down in cold blood. Um, and its war expands not just on so-called drug users but also towards the opposition, no, killing activists, labor activists, trade unionists, peasant organizers, indigenous peoples, no. And So what can people do? We At this time we really encourage folks to join the international movement, a solidarity movement for the Philippines in the form of the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines. But locally here in New Jersey, we encourage folks to talk to your legislators. Um, I have a list of uh, the legislators here um, who have influence um, on the military aid to the Philippines, no, such as Senator Robert Menendez, Senator Cory Booker, Chris Smith, um, Albio Series. These are folks who sit on the Senate Appropriations Committee, who continues to, send your tax dollars to kill Filipinos in the Philippines. We ask that you demand that they cut U.S. military aid to the Philippines, and even if they can hold a hearing on the current human rights situation in the Philippines, so that the American people may know the gravity of the situation back in the Philippines.
Wow, I really wasn't aware of the depth of our involvement with this. Have you had any responses from these elected officials? Do you sense any kind of cooperation from any of them?
Well, so far, what we've heard is that yeah, they support upholding human rights, but we need more than words. We need action. As we say, um, every day that this war on drugs continues in the Philippines, 33 more people are killed and the military aid to the Philippines is still there, no? So we ask our legislators to go beyond words and really cut military aid now.
I wish I saw some progress out there, but just from this conversation, I can tell you that I
Mm-hmm.
should have known this. You know, like honestly, this should be out there because elected officials should be talking about it, and I don't hear it in public at least. And I was just wondering, you know, if
Mm-hmm.
we've had any kind of response. But I agree with you, and
Mm-hmm.
what we'll definitely do here is, you know, after we record tonight, you know, you send me whatever links or whatever
Sure.
direction we can send supporters in. I am personally opposed to all forms of warfare, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
getting there. I never was. I was getting with the Green Party turned me into a real
Uh-huh.
peacenik, man. So, you know,
um,
and it's
mhm.
just I don't even want to learn this stuff. I just wanted to stop hearing about all the violence and war going on in our name and deal with
Yeah.
that. And I'm learning more, and it's horrifying. But you are one of the people fighting back and doing the best you can,
Mhm.
man. I know this is something close to your heart. I love
Yeah.
using you know, when some people use their passion to do some good. Um,
Mhm.
I think that's everything we need to talk about for now.
Sure.
Is there anything else you wanted to discuss? We do have a little time if
Sure.
there's another topic.
Well, I just wanted to, I guess, to add into the picture. I know I did talk about a pretty gloomy picture, but what I also wanted to say is that the Filipino people are fighting back. We have hundreds of years of experience of resistance. There is a growing revolutionary movement in the Philippines and a legal democratic movement that is rising up against the what we call as the Duterte's dictatorship, no, and there is a growing solidarity movement here in the United States, no, and I think there is a long history of solidarity movement from the United States to the Philippines, going back to the anti-imperialist league, no, in the 1900s, um, the United States took over the Philippines. So, the, the pressure to cut the U.S. military aid is a big help and will be a good way to support, no, the already growing resistance movement in the Philippines. We have upcoming events. If folks wanna support, we have June 24. We'll be marching for immigrant workers' rights in Jersey City. On July 7, we will have a forum on human rights in the Philippines at Highland Park. And then on July 23rd, we will be in front of the Philippine consulate in New York to hold a demonstration. So if anyone is interested, we hope that folks can support um, and definitely join the International Committee on Human Rights in the Philippines.
That's great, man. And you just reminded me of stuff. You know, I ran with 15 now for a few years. I'm still active with them, and you know, we had our march up in Jersey City,
Mm-hmm.
and man, Anak Bayan and another of the other Filipino organizations, they all came in together. We were all gathered around, like where are our comrades from Jersey City? And then they come marching around the block with their flags and stuff. I spent a little time leading up to that demonstration and afterwards doing some organizing around the event, and you know, I met you and your comrades at the Food Not Bombs food handout in the park, you know, working to flyer on another corner, and they'd stop by and then they were going to another meeting. So you're right, your resistance is in your blood, because these are impassioned people. They're mostly a younger crowd of people, and they're awesome. They were really inspiring, man. I remember, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
quite honestly, you know, we had a number of events. I ran with 15 now for about 4 years. That was the best event we ever threw. It was the most spirited. It was fun, and it got a serious point across. So you guys, you know how to organize. You know how to
Thank you.
organize.
All
If you're
right.
in the area, if you want to support Yves, please go to the website, check it out. We're going to put some stuff up and some links so you can contact him and get in touch and figure out how you can help this struggle if you're interested. While you're there, check out some other things. Just to plug real quick, this weekend, weekend. I will be in Ocean Township at the 32 Acres event on Sunday at 1 o'clock. I think I'm doing the introductions and an early speech, so get there early if you want to hear me rant about capitalism. Also on the website, we just did a really great What the Fuck is Going On in Trenton with our comrade Pat Noble. We analyzed the current situation in Trenton, which is always a mess and always fun to make fun of. So that's what we do on our program, What the Fuck is Going On in Trenton, with me and Pat. Please tell your friends to support New Jersey Revolution Radio. We're independent. We have no sponsors. It's just activists and impassioned people working for social justice. Like Yves. Yves, thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Good night, everybody.